Hello and welcome to this special edition of Arirang News. I'm Lee Jun in Seoul. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Seoul now, where he held talks with his South Korean counterpart Kang Kyung-hwa and Japan's Foreign Minister Taro Kono. And in just a moment, Arirang News will bring you a live coverage of the joint press conference held by the three officials, during which we'll be able to hear more about the outcome of Tuesday's summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump. But first, let's start over at the Blue House. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was there at the Blue House earlier this morning to brief President Moon Jae-in on the results of Tuesday's historic North Korea-U.S. summit. Now let's connect to our Blue House correspondent Hwang Ho-jun, who's on the line for us. So Ho-jun, we know Pompeo is currently meeting with his South Korean and Japanese counterparts, but what can you tell us about the meeting he had with President Moon?
Well, Mike Pompeo met with President Moon starting at 9 a.m. Korea time. So within 48 hours of the Kim-Trump summit in Singapore, he was relaying news about it directly to the South Korean leader. We've been told that the meeting lasted for about an hour, so it seems they had a lot to chew over. According to full reports here at the Blue House, President Moon congratulated the U.S. for the successful summit with North Korea while greeting Pompeo, who himself played a key role in making that meeting happen with his trips to Pyongyang. President Moon noted how there are mixed evaluations on the joint agreement signed between President Trump and Kim Jong-un, but said the most important thing is that it helped the international community, let alone the U.S., Japan, and South Korea, to break away from the threats of war, nuclear weapons, and long-range missiles. He called it, quote, a great historic achievement. Pompeo, in return, emphasized that President Moon was also a major contributor to the success, saying if it wasn't for the successful inter-Korean summit, the one-on-one between Trump and Kim may not have happened. The top American diplomat added the Singapore summit was a huge first step, and that Seoul and Washington must closely cooperate to bring about better results in the future, ultimately establishing lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. Pompeo's visit fulfilled the promise President Trump made during his 20-minute phone call with President Moon on the eve of the Singapore summit. Later in the afternoon, Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono is also set to meet with President Moon, and they will likely discuss various ways to navigate the post-Singapore negotiations with Pyongyang through close cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo. Afterwards, President Moon will convene a full meeting of the National Security Council, this according to the Blue House. It's thought this is A, to consider what exactly President Trump was referring to when he talked about, quote, war games, whether it's the Allies' usual drills or something else, and B, to evaluate the outcomes of the Singapore summit as well as discuss follow-up measures to implement the agreement reached by Trump and Kim Jong-un. Jiun?
Thank you, Ho-jun, for that. Now, the two Koreas are also holding their first high-level military talks in over a decade to discuss easing cross-border tensions as a follow-up to the Panmunjom declaration made by the two leaders back on April 27th. This also comes after the North Korea-U.S. freeze-for-freeze agreement, with the regime halting its nuclear program and Washington announcing plans to suspend joint military exercises with South Korea. The talks today between the two Koreas are taking place at the border village of Panmunjom, and we go live to our Park Ji-won, who's been keeping an eye on this at Seoul's Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue. Ji-won?
Ji-yun, good morning. The talks have started at 10 a.m. Korea time at the Inter-Korean border village of Panmunjom, some 50 kilometers north of Seoul. The 5-member delegations from South and North Korea are participating in the talks, and they are expected to discuss ways to stop hostile acts around the Korean border area and to restore military communication lines between the two Koreas and to promote further military cooperation. South Korea's unification minister talked to the South Korean delegation here at the Office for the Inter-Korean Dialogue in Seoul before the delegation left for Panmunjom in the morning, stressing the delegation should have a calm and active negotiating attitude. And now let's hear what the South Korean delegation's chief negotiator, two-star General Kim Do-gyun, told the media before the delegation headed to Panmunjom this morning.
During the talks, we'll be discussing ways to ease tensions between two Koreas, as well as ways to implement military-related agreements on the Panmunjom Declaration. We'll also discuss details regarding when to hold inter-Korean talks between defense ministers. We'll do our best to bring a new era of peace to the Korean peninsula.
And it's expected that the talks will continue until the late afternoon. Currently, the talks are set for 1 day only, but more of these inter-Korean military talks on a variety of issues are expected to be held. Well, that's all I have for now, and I will bring you more updates in the later newscast. Back to you, Jiyoon.
Thank you, Jiwon, for that. North Korea's Kim Young-nam, who serves as the regime ceremonial head of state, is due to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. A Kremlin spokesperson told reporters on Wednesday that the two will have a meeting on Thursday, but provided no further details. Kim Young-nam arrived in Russia on Tuesday to attend the opening ceremony of the 2018 World Cup, and he's expected to stay in the country until Friday. It's widely expected that Kim will brief Putin on the details of the North Korea-U.S. summit and ask for Moscow's support in the denuclearization process. So after the North Korea-U.S. summit ended on a positive note, there are hopes it could lead to the reopening of the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex that was shut a couple of years ago due to strained relations between Seoul and Pyongyang. Businesses that had operations at the complex are stressing that they themselves, as well as the South Korean government, must be prepared for a possible lifting of sanctions on Pyongyang and ask for the factory park to reopen. Our Kim Hyo-sun has more.
The historic North Korea-U.S. summit has led to increased hopes for the reopening of the Kaesong industrial complex, which has been collecting dust since February 2016. The agreement signed in late April by South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to establish new bilateral relations and to make joint efforts to build a lasting and stable peace regime on the Korean peninsula could eventually lead to eased international sanctions on Pyongyang. There are also pundits who forecast the official end of the Korean War could be declared on July 27th, the day when the Korean War Armistice Agreement was signed in 1953, or at the UN General Assembly in September. The South Korean companies argue they need to inspect their factories in Kaesong to prepare for a possible lifting of international sanctions on the regime, as well as the reopening of the complex.
We must prepare for the resumption of the Kaesong industrial complex.
Experts also point to the successful operation of the complex as the basis for inter-Korean economic cooperation.
Reopening the Kaesong industrial complex is necessary because we already have the infrastructure and it would not cost us additional time or money.
Referring to their unanswered requests to visit the complex, the South Korean companies are urging the government to show more commitment toward reopening the factory park and to be fully prepared for any future developments. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
And on to the local elections held in South Korea on Wednesday. It was a landslide victory for the ruling Democratic Party of Korea. Voter turnout was the second highest ever for a local election, coming in above 60% for the first time in more than 20 years. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
This year's local elections were a massive win for the ruling Democratic Party of Korea and an unmitigated disaster for the main opposition Liberty Korea Party. Out of 17 posts for mayor and governor, the ruling party claimed victory in 14. What's especially significant about these positions is that they are seen as a springboard to key national leadership positions in the future. The party dominated the heavily populated areas of Seoul and its neighboring Gyeonggi-do province. Likewise, they took seats in the central districts, including Daejeon, on top of the usual liberal strongholds such as Jeollado province. And even in conservative strongholds, with the exception of two regions, Ulsan, Busan, and Gyeongsangnam-do province were taken by the ruling party. On Jeju Island, an independent candidate was elected. With that, the ruling party has been given an important boost, having added 5 governor and mayoral seats to the 9 it already had.
Our win is a victory for the people. We should repay voters who cast their ballots for us. We will do our best as the ruling party, take a more humble approach, and thoroughly deal with pending issues.
Pundits have pointed to the positive developments in regards to North Korea, saying the uptick in South-North relations and President Moon Jae-in's high approval ratings were favorable factors for the ruling party in this year's local elections. and the fact that the elections were largely overshadowed by the North Korea-US summit. Fresh allegations regarding the candidates themselves, or even ongoing issues such as an online opinion rigging scandal or even the faltering economy were pushed out of the spotlight. At the other end of the spectrum, the main opposition party wasn't able to position itself as a strong alternative. It still hasn't been able to completely sever its ties to impeach former President Park Geun-hye, and it's been more or less critical of everything the government has been doing, with voters unable to regain much trust in the party.
It's the first time we've experienced such a devastating loss. We humbly accept the results.
The outcome might lead to some serious political reshuffling down the road, which could come in the form of a change in party leadership and later perhaps the formation of a coalition or defections to other parties. There's no doubt the results will give the ruling party a massive boost in that it will be easier to get President Moon Jae-in's policy agendas rolling, but some experts also say it's important to keep a balance between the progressive and conservative blocs in order to keep the ruling party in check. They also point out that the results don't necessarily mean that the people are happy with everything the ruling party is doing.
Moon Jae-in administration just took the administration just for 1 year. It's too soon to make any evaluation or judgment. Even if they won, the election with big margin, ruling party might have to think about whether their victory is what they have done right, or people still have, even though despite many factors that worry people.
The general consensus is that the ruling party will have to work extra hard before the next elections to compensate the voters that supported them, while at the same time the main opposition party needs to reflect on its current shortcomings and use the pain of the defeat as an opportunity to overhaul its still tainted image. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And now we're going to head over to the joint press conference held by the three top diplomats of the U.S., South Korea, and Japan. Let's take a listen.
Excellencies, please wear your earpieces in front of you. 지금부터 한미일 3국 외교장관의 공동 기자회견을 시작하겠습니다.
Now we will begin the press conference.
강경화 외교부 장관,
We have Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa from Korea, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono, who will give 5-minute speeches each.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press, from Korea, from the U.S., from Japan, I also think. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome the U.S. Secretary of State, Mr. Mike Pompeo, and my Japanese counterpart, the Foreign Minister, Mr. Taro Kono, here in Seoul. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to express my deep gratitude to Secretary Pompeo for coming to Seoul right after the historic summit meeting between President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un of North Korea on June 12th in Singapore. This is also Secretary Pompeo's first visit to Seoul as Secretary of State, so welcome, Mr. Secretary. Your presence here today demonstrates better than anything how closely we work together to strengthen our alliance and to achieve our shared goals. I would also like to convey my deep gratitude to Minister Kono for maintaining close coordination for the success of the U.S. DPRK summit. And it's very good to have him here back in Seoul so soon after his visit in April. During the meeting today, Secretary Pompeo briefed us on the outcome of the June 12th U.S. DPRK summit. I congratulated him and President Trump for the success of the summit, which will be recorded as a historic turning point towards completely ridding the Korean Peninsula of the last remnant of the Korean War, resolving the North Korean nuclear issue, and securing permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. The following are the key points of our meeting today. First, on the U.S. DPRK summit, the three of us welcomed the adoption of the joint statement in Singapore, where Chairman Kim reaffirmed his firm and unwavering commitment to the complete denuclearization of the peninsula, while President Trump committed to provide North Korea with the security guarantees. This is the first time
that the highest authority of North Korea promised the President of the United States to work towards the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which we believe has bolstered the political momentum for action to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue. Secondly, we shared our understanding that the June 12th summit is not the end, but a new beginning towards a denuclearized and peaceful Korean Peninsula. In this regard, it is our shared expectation to see substantial progress in the denuclearization process through follow-up negotiations, building upon the outcome of the U.S. DPRK summit. We also hope that this process will spell out a more concrete picture of a brighter and more prosperous future for North Korea. Thirdly, the three of us agreed that we would not have been here where we are today without the close cooperation of our leaders. Especially the frequent and close communication and the trust forged between President Moon and President Trump have been the driving force that has led to the summit in Singapore and ensured its success. In this regard, I look forward to continuing the no-daylight cooperation and consultation with Secretary Pompeo, as well as Minister Kono, towards the complete denuclearization and permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. We will continue our close cooperation with other neighboring countries as well as our friends and supporters of the international community. And lastly, Secretary Pompeo and I reaffirmed that the ROK-US alliance, which celebrates its 65th anniversary this year, is robust as ever, that the United States forces in Korea has played and will continue to play a crucial role for deterrence and peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. In conclusion, let me say how grateful I am to Secretary Pompeo and Minister Kono for the fruitful exchanges of views today. Thank you very much.
강 장관님 감사합니다.
Thank you
다음은
very
폼페오
much.
장관님이십니다.
Now we will have U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
It's truly an honor to be here in Seoul, standing with Foreign Minister Kang and Foreign Minister Kono. It is an incredibly pivotal moment in history, following on the historic summit between President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un. The trilateral cooperation among the United States, South Korea, and Japan has been crucial to the effectiveness regarding our efforts related to the denuclearization of North Korea, and it was certainly key to our opportunity for the summit in Singapore. The discussions we held today amongst the three of us reflect our three countries' commitment to continue working together towards the ultimate success of this effort. Today, the Foreign Minister and I discussed the outcome of President Trump's summit with Chairman Kim Jong-un and the importance of staying closely coordinated throughout the entire process of denuclearization. The President's summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 2 days ago does indeed mark a turning point in the U.S.-North Korea relationship. Kim Jong-un's public commitment to completely denuclearize is an important step towards bringing lasting peace and stability to Northeast Asia and indeed to the entire world. As the President said, this will be a process and not an easy one. Staying closely aligned with our allies, the Republic of Korea and Japan, will be critical to the success of that outcome. The world should rest assured that the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan remain committed to achieving the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. The U.S. alliances with these two countries are absolutely ironclad. Minister Kang, Minister Kono, and I have developed a close friendship, and together we will continually closely coordinate with respect to North Korea as we move forward together. President Trump has also made it clear that if Kim Jong-un denuclearizes, there is a bright future for North Korea and its people. He outlined that vision beautifully here in Seoul when he spoke at the National Assembly last November. We envision a strong, connected, secure, and prosperous North Korea that is fully integrated into the community of nations. Kim Jong-un indicated in Singapore that he shared that vision. We are eager to see him take the next steps to achieve it, because the United States is ready for a new chapter in our history. Thank you.
폼페이오 장관님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Next, Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono.
First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Minister Kang Kyung-hwa for hosting this Trilateral Foreign Ministers meeting immediately after the first U.S.-North Korea summit in Singapore. This is the first trilateral meeting since Secretary Mike Pompeo assumed the current position. Minister Khan and I are pleased to welcome Secretary Pompeo to join us. Today, I would also like to thank Secretary Pompeo for providing us with a timely and first-hand briefing of the summit meeting, where Chairman Kim Jong-un committed to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Taking this opportunity, I would like to express my heartfelt respect for the strong leadership of President Trump and hard work by Secretary Pompeo. This is only the beginning of a challenging yet significant process to achieve our common goal, peace and stability in the region and beyond. Through North Korea's complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement of all weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missiles of all ranges. Following Secretary Pompeo's briefing, we had a frank discussion on how we urge North Korea to take concrete actions towards the full implementation of the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions based on the outcome of the summit. We all reaffirmed that the three countries continue our joint effort to this end. With regard to security guarantees to North Korea, in the joint statement, North Korea reaffirmed its commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, while the United States is committed to provide a security guarantee to North Korea. We understand that the United States will advance the discussion on provision of security guarantees while carefully monitoring whether North Korea takes concrete steps to fulfill its commitment to denuclearization. And we also note that no security guarantees have been given yet. In addition, concerning U.S. ROK exercise, we believe that the Japan-U.S. alliance, as well as the deterrence based on them, play an essential role in security in the Northeast Asia. With regard to the pause in U.S. ROK exercise, the detail will be discussed between the United States and ROK. In any case, we understand that any pause in exercise is contingent upon DPRK action towards denuclearization. We also understand that the United States maintains its commitment to defend allies, and Japan-U.S. security commitment and U.S. forces in Japan posture remain unchanged. In any case, we would like to maintain close contact with them since these issues may also affect the security of Japan and the region. Japan continues to seek to normalize its relations with North Korea in accordance with Japan DPRK Pyongyang Declaration through comprehensively resolving outstanding issues of concern, such as nuclear, missile, and abductees issues, as well as through the settlement of unfortunate past. Japan will continue to play an important role in realizing peace and stability in Northeast Asia in close coordination with the United States and ROK. I am looking forward to further working with both Secretary Pompeo and Minister Kang Kyung-hwa in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Foreign Minister Taro Kono. We will now receive questions from the journalists. Due to time constraints, we will only receive one question per country. First, from Joseonilbo, Please designate the minister. We would like to ask behalf of the Korean journalists. We have questions to ask to each one of you. First, a question to Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa. The halt in ROK-US drills, were there any kind of prior coordination between the two countries? If there were no prior coordination, what do you plan to do in the future? And this morning on CNN, the Uji Freedom Guardian drills, it's been released that the U.S. government plans to halt the drills. Have you heard about this?
Question goes to Secretary Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, joint statement signed in Singapore lacks many details which were included in previous agreements with North Korea. For example, 26 years ago in South North Agreement in 1992, North Korea pledged not to produce, maintain, use any nuclear weapons, and they also agreed not to have uranium enrichment and plutonium reprocessing facilities. And 13 years ago in 2005, in a joint statement generated from six-party talks, they agreed to verifiable denuclearization and promised to abandon all nuclear weapons and existing nuclear programs. And President Trump and you have mentioned so many times the U.S. would not repeat past mistakes, but how can you believe North Korea's sincerity when they refuse to clarify the specific timeline and measures of denuclearization in a written form? So did you believe North Korea because North Korea mentioned some initial steps, including the closure of missile engine testing sites? And how can you be sure you're not repeating past mistakes or even making worse mistakes by allowing North Korea continue endless negotiations and try to run out the clock? And do you have specific measures in mind to verify North Korea's denuclearization?
最後の質問は河野大臣に伺いしたいと申します。今朝日本政府は今年の8月ぐらいに朝鮮との首脳会談を開催するという予定であると報道がありましたが、もし拉致問題とか
You said there are possibilities that you will have a summit with North Korea. If there are no progress, regardless of this, are you going to pursue normalization between DPRK and Japan?
Just so happy to see a very multilingual representative of our correspondence. 제게 준 질문에 대해서 답변드리겠습니다.
To answer your question to myself, President Trump, who met with Chairman Kim, they had a very intense conversation, and as a conclusion, he said this momentum would be reinforced in the future. And the joint military drill together with US and South Korea, this is based on the alliance between the two countries, and we carry this out on the basis of our cooperation. This ironclad alliance and this ironclad defense mechanism we have will be the underlining, the baseline of what will happen in the future. We have not spoken in depth about this topic today.
Pompeo 장관님.
Next, Secretary of State Mike
Pompeo. Several questions here. Let me try and address them comprehensively. Three things that are worth mentioning. First, there is not any difference between the three ministers and our leaders up here with respect to how we're going to address the denuclearization of North Korea. The agreement that was signed made very clear that this would be the complete denuclearization and made express reference and incorporated into that the very well done document, the Panmunjom Declaration, which itself incorporates all previous agreements between inter-Korean agreements. I think that's important as we come to understand the agreement that was signed between the United States and North Korea. What happened in Singapore created an enormous opportunity. And when we refer to the mistakes of the past, they were providing economic and financial relief before the complete denuclearization had taken place. That is not going to happen. President Trump made that clear not only in his press conference, but made it clear when he was with Chairman Kim Jong-un himself, that the sequence will be different this time. That's important. It is central to the understanding. You suggested that there was some risk that the clock would run out and that they would delay. We believe that Chairman Kim Jong-un understands the urgency of the timing of completing this denuclearization, that he understands that we must do this quickly, and that sanctions relief, we should recall these are UN sanctions, that sanctions relief cannot take place until such time as we have demonstrated that North Korea has been completely denuclearized. The summit created this enormous historic opportunity for us to move forward together and fundamentally reshape the relationship between the United States and North Korea. Verification is central to that. Complete denuclearization certainly encompasses that idea very clearly. And I know each of the three of us leaders here today are tasked with making sure that we implement that in a way that is as quick and as complete as we can achieve over the coming days and weeks.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Foreign Minister Taro Kono.
The government of Japan, based on the Pyongyang Declaration, nuclear weapons, the abductee issue, and the missiles issue should be resolved, and then the normalization can come. The economic relief could be coming after this. Until today, we have been negotiating through various routes. However, Prime Minister Abe, talking directly with North Korea does not merely mean that they are going to speak, but it will come to a resolution of these issues. The U.S. and South Korea, we will be in close coordination as well as in close coordination with the international community. And then we will sit down with North Korea and to pursue the efforts that are being held, but we do not have anything concrete at the moment.
Thank you so much. Secretary Pompeo, President Trump, just after returning to Washington, said people can sleep well tonight because there's, quote, no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea. Isn't that premature when North Korea has just as many nuclear weapons today as it did a week ago? And do you understand why that might make your allies nervous that the Trump administration is too trusting of Kim Jong-un? And to Ministers Kono and Kang, have you received any assurances from Pompeo that the KCNA report is false, that the U.S. has not agreed to a phased approach where concessions are made before denuclearization is complete? Thank you.
So I'll take both questions. Foreign Minister Kang obviously can answer for herself, but let me be very blunt. President Trump has been incredibly clear about the sequencing of denuclearizations and relief from the sanctions. He said this from the very beginning. He said it again.
더 말씀을 하셨는데 그리고 기자회견에서도 말씀을 하셨고 김 위원장과의 회의에서도 이야기를 하셨습니다. 먼저 첫 번째. 이것은 저한테 하신 질문은 아닌 것 같은데요. 그 순서에 대해서 말씀해 주시겠습니다. 지금 말씀드리지 않았습니까?
Refer to that question. First of all, complete denuclearization will be prioritized, and then we will talk about delaying and lifting up the sanctions. Relating to the first question, when President Trump said that in Singapore, when the two leaders met, they had the summit, and they had a very candid talk about what kind of changes are needed and how North Korea can rejoin the international community and how we can reduce the threat. We will re-coordinate so that North Korea can rejoin the international community. Thank you very much.
次に日本の記者の方からご質問を受けたいと思います。内海正文、
All right, sorry for that audio. We were having technical problems with audio at the scene, I think, so we're having problem hearing the three ministers speak. But for now, let's head over to our Arirang's Park Hee-jun, who will actually tell us more about the joint press conference that we just heard minutes ago. So Hee-jun, what can you tell us on this?
The joint press conference came right after a trilateral session at the foreign ministry between the top diplomats of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, where U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo briefed South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa and Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono on the details of the recent summit in Singapore. And before that, there was a bilateral session between Kang and Pompeo. Now, it was revealed at the press conference she's agreed on two main points. One, that they welcomed the adoption of the joint statement made in Sentosa, where Kim reaffirmed his commitment to complete the nuclearization of Korean Peninsula while Japan promised to guarantee the security of the North Korean regime. And secondly, that summit is only the beginning of peace and prosperity on the peninsula. The three nations will continue their follow-up cooperation. And that the U.S. and Japan agreed that without close cooperation between their things would not have come this far. The three top diplomats also agreed to continue their joint efforts with North Korea to achieve denuclearization and peace on the Korean Peninsula. It made it clear to reporters that there will be no economic rewards or any kind of benefits given to North Korea before its complete denuclearization. Kang Kyung-hwa also reaffirmed the ROK-U.S. alliance that celebrates its 65th better than ever, where forces will continue to play an important role on the Korean Peninsula. Now, following the conference, Kang and her Japanese counterpart Kono will hold talks over a working lunch. And as for Pompeo, he's scheduled to fly over to Beijing in the afternoon to brief senior Chinese officials and possibly President Xi Jinping on the North Korea summit. He's also expected to ask for support for the follow-up measures to implement the joint statement before he heads back home in the late evening. I'll be keeping a close eye on that trip to Beijing as well, but for now, I'll pass things back to you. Yoon?
All right, thank you, Hee-jun, for that. We'll definitely keep you guys updated on what we heard from the press conference, as well as the questions that we weren't able to hear because of the audio imbalances, but definitely we'll keep you updated on that. All right, actually, let's head back over to the joint press conference scene, where I think we might be able to hear some of the remaining questions.
Thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimasu.
And now we continue with the rest of our newscast. It was a similar success story for the ruling party in the by-elections that were also held on Wednesday. The Democratic Party of Korea added 11 seats in the National Assembly, strengthening its position as the biggest party in parliament. Our Kim Mo-kyun has more.
The ruling Democratic Party of Korea claimed an overwhelming victory in Wednesday's elections, sweeping a total of 11 seats out of the 12 up for grabs in the National Assembly. This means the party succeeded in winning all of the 11 seats it put up a candidate for, excluding the city of Kimcheon, which went to the main opposition Liberty Korea Party. The ruling party retains its position as the largest party with a total of 130 lawmakers, widening its previous 6-seat gap to a whopping 17-seat difference with the main opposition party. Now that the local and by-elections are finally over, the National Assembly is set to go back to business. But despite the ruling party's landslide victory, the dispute-prone atmosphere in the National Assembly is unlikely to change, as the combined seats of the opposition parties still gives them the majority, and the agreement of the majority is required to pass a bill. In the coming weeks, a long row is expected among rival parties as they now have to face one of the most important tasks given to the parliament, the election of its leaders, especially the speaker and the members of the standing committees. The ruling party says the current custom of selecting the speaker from the largest single party should be kept, but the opposition claims there's no such rule. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
The Federal Reserve has hiked U.S. rates yet again by its usual 25 basis points. Now, the increase is the seventh since 2015 and second this year alone, with more in the pipeline in the coming months. And this comes as the new chair of the Fed said the U.S. economy is finally picking up a head of steam after several years in the doldrums. Our Kaesong has more.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has raised its benchmark interest rate for the second time this year by a quarter percentage point to a range of 1.75% to 2%. It's the seventh hike since 2015, and a majority of policymakers say they now expect a total of 4 interest rate increases this year after they had been split about whether to raise rates 3 or 4 times. The Fed also dropped its pledge to keep rates low enough to stimulate the economy for some time, reflecting a U.S. economy that's getting stronger.
Economic growth appears to have picked up in the current quarter, largely reflecting a bounce back in household spending. Business investment continues to grow strongly, and the overall outlook for growth remains favorable. Fiscal policy is boosting the economy. Ongoing job gains are raising incomes and confidence.
Quarterly economic projections released at the meeting show Fed officials expect the economy to grow 2.8% this year, up 0.1% from its forecast in March. U.S. unemployment fell to 3.8% in May, the lowest since 2000, signaling the Fed is at or near its maximum employment goal. Inflation is also snapping into line, with fresh projections Wednesday indicating it would run above the Fed's 2% target, hitting 2.1% this year and remaining there through 2020. While the course of U.S. rate hikes remains gradual, the upbeat economic projections and slightly tighter pace of monetary easing is raising concern among emerging economies. In recent months, emerging economies have been seeing capital outflows and their currencies weaken against the stronger greenback, contributing to currency crisis in countries such as Argentina, Turkey, and Brazil. Officials at the European Central Bank are set to meet on Thursday to discuss for the first time when to end their bond purchasing program. The Fed's decision is also putting more pressure on South Korea to raise rates, with a U.S.-Korea rate gap now at 0.5%. 김혜성, 아리랑 뉴스.
It only comes around once every 4 years, but for hundreds of millions of football fans around the world, the time is almost here. The World Cup starts tonight with the host nation Russia taking on Saudi Arabia in Moscow. And let's get the latest from our Won Jung-hwan in Russia as World Cup frenzy once again hits fever pitch.
Russia has spent more than 8 years getting ready for the 2018 World Cup. And finally, the curtain will be raised on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. local time at Moscow's famous Luzhniki Stadium. Russia's largest sporting arena was built in the 1950s and has since hosted many international sporting events, including the 1980 Moscow Olympics. In 2013, the original stadium underwent renovations for the World Cup. 3,000 more seats were added, bringing the total capacity to 81,000. While the country has done a tremendous job to prepare for the World Cup in terms of facilities, one of the main concerns is the expected influx of tens of thousands of international football fans to some of the host nation's regional cities, which will have never seen so many foreign tourists before. But Russians are optimistic their nation can pull off a successful World Cup and send fans home happy with memories that will last a lifetime.
The people sometimes can look sad, not that like this face, but in their soul they really friendly.
It's an amazing place to be now because it's an super energy around everywhere. People are very hospitable. They love events. They are making great events. They like to have fun.
The opening ceremony for the 2018 World Cup will have a slightly different format compared to previous editions of the tournament. This time, the ceremony will focus on musical acts and take place much closer to kickoff, just half an hour before the start of the opening match between Russia and Saudi Arabia. British music icon Robbie Williams and celebrated Russian soprano Aida Garifulina will entertain the crowd in the stadium and the hundreds of millions of people watching around the world. After the pre-match entertainment, the trophy the teams are all battling for will be brought in by Brazil's two-time World Cup champion, Ronaldo. When the curtain is raised, 32 teams will compete over the next months for a place in the final at the Luzhniki Stadium on July 15th. 원정환, Arirang News, Moscow.
So the first match in the 2018 Russia World Cup kicks off in around 12 hours from now, and the World Cup is by far the world's biggest international sporting event. As a result, it's a gigantic money spinner for the official sponsors and the players, but there's also a less corporatized side to it as well, as our Choi Si-young explains.
While South Koreans prepare to cheer on the Taeguk Warriors next week, World Cup fever is sweeping Russia as the host nation gets ready to welcome international fans to the biggest event in world sport. One of the reasons for the buzz in Russia is a supposedly psychic cat by the name of Achilles. Achilles, who is deaf, gears up to choose the winners of all of Russia's matches. Offered the choice of two bowls of food, one with the Russian flag and the other with the flag of Saudi Arabia, the white feline hesitates before choosing Russia to win Thursday's opening match. Such acts have become popular since Paul the Octopus made accurate predictions during the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, amassing 12 correct predictions out of 14, a success rate of over 85%. And for football fans visiting Russia, they will be looking to open their wallets to purchase some of the hottest World Cup merchandise on their shelves. Among the hottest sellers are welcome matryoshkas or Russian nesting dolls. What makes these dolls unique is that they have the faces of famous footballers painted on them.
It's World Cup time, and this is my favorite football player, so I think it's a great idea for a present or a souvenir.
And if those aren't your thing, how about carved stones? Stone is another traditional material in Russia. Workers at a stone cutting factory create stone bears, an animal which symbolizes Russia, and stone soccer balls to celebrate the World Cup.
The bear is the symbol of Russia, and we want to show to everyone that bear is a kind animal. It's an animal that wants to do sports and compete. This way, we promote our country.
So if you're lucky enough to be traveling to Russia for the World Cup, why not bring back a souvenir so you can cherish the memories forever? Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
The United States, Canada, and Mexico will host a joint World Cup in 2026. The three North American countries beat their bidding rival Morocco by 134 votes to 65 on Wednesday at the 68th FIFA Congress. The 2026 tournament will be the first time that the World Cup is hosted by three countries, and also the first time it will have a 48-team format, up from the current 32-team format. The U.S. will host 60 games, including the final, while Canada and Mexico will each have 10 games. Prosecutors in Germany have fined Volkswagen a whopping $1.2 billion over the carmaker's diesel emissions cheating scandal. It's another heavy blow to VW, which has been reeling from the scandal for years now. Our Nuaram has more.
Public prosecutors in Braunschweig, near VW's Wolfsburg headquarters, issued the €1 billion fine on Wednesday. They said it was one of the highest fines ever imposed on a company in Germany. After their investigation, prosecutors found that more than 10 million cars made between 2007 and 2015 and sold worldwide were fitted with software to cheat emissions tests. They also said monitoring duties had been breached in the Powertrain Development Department in the context of vehicle tests. Volkswagen said it accepted the penalty, adding it takes responsibility for the diesel crisis. Despite the large figure, the fine pales in comparison to the $25 billion VW has had to pay in fines, buybacks and compensation in the United States. The latest decision also does not affect any civil lawsuits, such as consumer complaints that are pending at the courts. The so-called Dieselgate scandal has been eating away at VW since 2015, when it admitted that its vehicles, along with those made by its Audi subsidiary, were fitted with defeat devices designed to circumvent emissions tests. The episode had led many consumers to steer away from diesel-powered cars and has also raised suspicions as to whether other car makers were engaged in similar malpractices. Just a few days ago, Daimler, the maker of Mercedes-Benz, was ordered to recall hundreds of thousands of vehicles in Europe for using illegal defeat devices. The automaker has denied any wrongdoing but said it will replace the software. Noaram, Arirang News.
An international team of scientists have found that Antarctica has lost nearly 3 trillion tons of ice over the last 25 years, mostly due to global warming. The study published in the journal Nature on Wednesday also found that the accelerating thaw has caused global sea levels to rise by more than 7.5 millimeters over the same period. Almost half of the lost ice has come just within the past 5 years. And scientists say at this current rate, Antarctica alone is now on track to raise world sea levels by about 15 centimeters by the year 2100. The Japanese parliament has passed a law to lower the legal age of adulthood from 20 to 18 years old. It is the first time for such a law to be passed in the country in 140 years and will take effect in April 2022. Among the biggest changes will be allowing 18-year-olds to get married without paternal consent. However, the legal age for drinking, smoking, and gambling will remain unchanged at 20.
Hello, I'm Lee Ji-hyun with the latest weather update. Central regions will continue to see rain until the afternoon. So 5 to 20 millimeters of rainfall is in the forecast for northern parts of the country and parts of Chungcheongnam-do province with thunder and lightning at times, so keep an umbrella handy. Daily highs in Seoul and Chuncheon will get up to 26 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Gyeongju will have breezy highs at 25 and 23 degrees respectively. Sunshine will return on Friday with highs in most parts getting up to near 30 degrees Celsius. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that wraps it up for now, but we'll be back with more of the day's top stories at 4 p.m. Korea time, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.